Ever wondered why the Czech Republic decided to rename itself Czechia? Let's find out.
Hi, I'm Leah, and I'm super excited to dive into today's topic.
And I'm Garrett, eager to explore Czechia with you all. Welcome to Laid Back Learning with Leah and Garrett. All right, let's set the stage for this one. Today we're talking the Czech Republic, also known as Czechia.
Picture this. I landed in Prague a few years ago, and every sign seemed to say something a little different. Some tour brochures said Czech Republic, my phone's map said Czechia, and a local bakery near Charles Bridge had a chalkboard that just said, "Welcome to Česko," which is the short Czech name. I remember thinking, wait, did I miss a memo? Then I fell into the city's history, like really fell in. I visited Wenceslas Square, this central boulevard named after Saint Wenceslaus, the patron saint of the country, and a guide explained how names carry identity. She talked about how Prague had twice been the imperial seat of the Holy Roman Empire, a multi-ethnic collection of Central European territories that lasted until 1806. She also explained how the country's short English name, Czechia, was officially endorsed in 2016 to match the domestic short name. At first, I wasn't sure about the switch. By the end of the trip, I loved it. Czechia felt like it honored the deep layers, from medieval crowns to modern universities, in a single, clean word.
That's a story worth telling. Prague has a way of turning a naming question into a full-on time machine. I'm down for that. Let's dig into this. Czechia is a landlocked country in Central Europe, bordered by Germany, Austria, Slovakia, and Poland. Think of it like a cultural crossroads at the center of a busy train station. Ideas and goods come in on one platform, and something new and blended goes out on another. Rivers like the Vltava and the Elbe help make those connections work for centuries, and that geography still shapes trade and travel today.
Totally. Basic sketch. An area of about 78,000 square kilometers with a hilly basin and a mountain rim that gives you these gorgeous contrasts. The capital is Prague. Brno is a tech and judicial hub. Ostrava has industrial roots. Plzeň is famous for engineering and brewing, and Liberec sits up in the north near the Polish and German borders. Politically, it's a unitary parliamentary republic with a two-chamber parliament, the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate. The president is head of state, elected by popular vote since 2013, while the prime minister leads the government day to day. The official language is Czech, a West Slavic language, close to Slovak. And if you go to court or a city office and you belong to a recognized minority, you can use your language and get a translator provided by the state.
And the current setup sits inside bigger clubs: the United Nations, NATO, the European Union, the OECD, the OSCE, the Council of Europe, and the Visegrad Group with Poland, Slovakia, and Hungary. Economy-wise, it's a high-income, advanced social market economy with universal healthcare and free tuition at public universities for domestic students. Recent numbers: HDI at 0.915 in 2023, which is high development, and income inequality is low by international standards, with a Gini of 24.4 in 2023. The currency is still the Czech koruna, not the euro. For practical tidbits, the calling code is +420, the main web domain is .cz, and the time zone is Central European Time, with summer daylight saving like most of the EU.
Okay, let's move on. Early days. The story opens way before kings and parliaments. In South Moravia, archaeologists uncovered the Venus of Dolní Věstonici, a small fired clay figurine dating back to around 29,000 to 25,000 BC. It's considered the oldest ceramic figurine in the world. That means people in this region were firing clay tens of thousands of years before the farming era. It was probably ritual or symbolic, not a coffee mug, but it shows technical imagination early on.
Want to hear something wild? Fast forward to the 300s BC. Celts known as the Boii settled the area we call Bohemia. The Latin name Boiohamum means home of the boy, and that's actually where the Old English name Bohemia comes from. In the 1st century, the Germanic Marcomanni and Quadi were around. Later waves, like the Huns in the 500s, moved through, and then Slavic groups settled and organized. By the 600s, we get Samo's empire. Samo was a Frankish merchant who led Slavs against the nomadic Avars and became the ruler of the first documented Slavic polity in Central Europe. It didn't last long, but it proved the idea. Slavic states could form here.
Here's where it gets really interesting. In the 800s, Great Moravia takes off under Svatoslav I, a powerful Moravian ruler. The region is Christianized by Saints Cyril and Methodius, Byzantine missionaries who created the Glagolitic script, the earliest Slavic alphabet, and used Old Church Slavonic as a liturgical language, meaning the language of religious services. That kickstarts Slavic literacy traditions. Around 870 in Bohemia proper, the Przemyslid dynasty consolidated the Duchy of Bohemia, and Prague began rising as a political and church center. By 1002, Bohemia is an imperial estate in the Holy Roman Empire, and in 1198 it's elevated to a kingdom. The Golden Bull of Sicily in 1212 confirms hereditary kingship for Przemysl Ottokar I. That's a constitutional milestone.
Next up, the rise and the struggle. The 1300s bring the House of Luxembourg to the Bohemian throne. Charles IV, who became Holy Roman Emperor, makes Prague shine as an imperial seat from 1346 to 1437. He founds Charles University in 1348, the oldest university in Central Europe. But late in that century, church reform pressure builds. John Hus, a Czech reformer and preacher, criticizes abuses and pushes for services in the vernacular, the everyday language. His followers, the Hussites, fight off multiple crusades in the early 1400s. John Žižka, a Hussite commander, wins at the Battle of Kutná Hora in 1421 using wagon forts, basically mobile defensive walls. The movement changes religious and political life here for generations.
Real talk, estimates say that in the 2 centuries after the Hussite Wars, most people in Bohemia and Moravia leaned Hussite in belief. Some sources say up to 90%, but historians debate the precision of that number. Either way, it set the stage for a very different religious landscape. Then, in 1526, after the Battle of Mohacs, the Habsburgs take the Bohemian crown lands. Under Rudolf II, another Holy Roman Emperor, Prague is again the imperial seat from 1583 to 1611. The city buzzes with arts, astronomy, and alchemy. But tensions explode with the defenestration of Prague in 1618, officials thrown out of a castle window, and the 30 Years' War begins. The Bohemian Revolt is crushed at White Mountain in 1620, and the Habsburgs clamp down. Executions in 1621, forced re-Catholicization, and what people call a Dark Age follow. War, plague, and expulsions of Protestants shrink the population dramatically. Still, Baroque culture flourishes in churches and palaces. History rarely moves in just one direction.
Yeah, that hits different. It was upheaval with art at the same time. The 1600s and 1700s bring Ottoman incursions into Moravia, big plagues, and peasant uprisings tied to famine and feudal burdens. Over the late 1700s to 1848, serfdom is abolished step by step. In the 1800s, the Czech national revival pumps new life into the language and identity as scholars and writers standardize Czech and build cultural institutions. The 1848 revolution in Prague gets suppressed, but the ideas don't vanish. The 1867 Austro-Hungarian Compromise gives Hungary autonomy, but not Bohemia, a sore point for Czech politicians. By 1907, universal male suffrage arrives in the empire, so more voices land in politics, just as the old system nears its end.
Switching gears just a little, the modern resolution. In 1918, with World War I ending, Czechoslovakia is founded and Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk emerges as a key leader, a philosopher-president figure. Here's a striking piece. The new state inherits nearly 80% of Austria-Hungary's industry with only about a quarter of its population. That helps it stay the only liberal democracy in Central and Eastern Europe throughout the interwar years. By 1938, it ranks 10th in world industrial production. But then the Munich Agreement hands over border regions to Nazi Germany, and the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia is set up. Occupation is brutal. Still, Czech and Slovak pilots like those in No. 310 Squadron fly for the Royal Air Force in the Battle of Britain. In 1945, liberation restores Czechoslovakia. After the war, most German speakers are expelled under Allied sanctioned transfers, reshaping the borderlands. In 1946, the Communist Party wins the largest share of the vote, and in 1948, a coup creates a one-party state that lasts until the Velvet Revolution in 1989. There's a dramatic reform moment in 1968 called the Prague Spring, an attempt at socialism with a human face, but a Soviet-led invasion ends it, and normalization follows. Then 1989 brings peaceful mass protests, democracy returns, and in January 1993, Czechoslovakia dissolves peacefully into the Czech Republic and Slovakia in the so-called Velvet Divorce.
While we're on a roll, the new Czech Republic keeps building links to Europe. It joins NATO and the EU and keeps the koruna with a flexible exchange rate instead of adopting the euro. Administrative rights for minorities get codified in Act 273 of 2001 and the Code of Administrative Procedure in 2004. If you belong to a recognized minority and you need to use your language with authorities or a court, the state covers translation if needed. Recognized languages include Polish, German, Hungarian, Romani, and since 2013, Belarusian and Vietnamese, which surprises some folks. Slovak, given how close it is to Czech and the shared Czechoslovak history, can be used in some proceedings too. In 2016, the government endorses Czechia as the official English short name to match Česko. The UN, EU, NATO, and mapping platforms adopt it, and by 2022, even the AP stylebook says both Czechia and the Czech Republic are acceptable. Today, you'll see a country with strong social indicators, HDI at 0.915, low inequality, and an IMF snapshot showing GDP at about $433 billion nominal, with PPP per capita over $63,000. Also, fun bits. The national motto is Pravda vítězí, truth prevails. The anthem is Kde domov můj, where is my home? And the calling code +420 is everywhere, from businesses to emergency info.
Okay, let's take a turn here. There's a question that still tugs at me. The name Czech itself. In Czech, it's Czech. Where does it come from? One common idea traces it to a Proto-Slavic root, often written as Čel, meaning a member of the people or a kinsman, kind of like saying one of us. But the evidence is thin so far back in time. Linguists are careful about this. Records are scarce, and early ethnonyms can be slippery. So, I'm not totally convinced we can pin it down with confidence yet.
That's a solid point, but I'm kinda team Čel on this one. The pattern lines up with related Slavic words about kin and peoplehood. It's not courtroom proof, more like a strong circumstantial case. If you think about how groups name themselves, a term meaning our people or the kin fits. Why do you think that's not enough to sway you? Is it the lack of direct written attestation? Or the fact that multiple roots could converge into a similar sounding word over centuries?
Both. Honestly, the lack of early texts makes it hard to rule out other pathways, like a name attached to a legendary leader. There's that Czech legend about a forefather named Czech, who supposedly led the people to Mount Sheep. Legends don't have to be historically literal, but they can influence language. Also, sound shifts over time can make different roots converge. So I'd say, great hypothesis, open verdict. What a twist that the country with a motto about truth prevailing still has this etymology mystery hanging out there.
Yeah, that checks out. A friendly cold case. While we're on names, there's a pop culture angle. In 2017, Google Maps shifted to Czechia, and suddenly anyone searching flights, maps, or weather started seeing the short name by default. Then the AP stylebook in 2022 said both forms are fine, with a note that Czechia is the government's preferred short form. That mainstreams it. It's like how a nickname sticks once your group chat changes your contact name. From then on, it just shows up everywhere.
Keeping it real, that definitely nudged my brain. After the maps changed, I started saying Czechia more. And there's a practical win. Databases and labels like the .cz domain, plus the UN and EU lists, all line up cleaner with a short name. Consistency helps everything from sports graphics to shipping forms. Small change, big ripple. Let's unpack this counterfactual. What if the Munich Agreement in 1938 had not ceded territory to Nazi Germany? Czechoslovakia at that time had formidable border fortifications and a strong industrial base, think armaments and machinery, plus a functioning democracy with motivated armed forces. If France and Britain had backed Prague instead of conceding the Sudetenland, maybe deterrence works, or at least the cost of German aggression spikes hard on day one.
Here's a thought I've been turning over. Even a few months of coordinated defense could have forced Germany to split focus, delay timetables, or burn through resources faster. Czechoslovakia's terrain is mountainous at the rim, good for defense, and factories in the Bohemian and Moravian lands were world-class. If the Allies stood firm and the Wehrmacht hit a fortified wall, plus sanctions and mobilization elsewhere, maybe Berlin recalibrates. Politically, that could preserve the only interwar democracy in the region, keeping a different intellectual and cultural center alive in Central Europe.
But here's my why. Would the Allied publics have supported a long, grinding defense in 1938? If not, Czechoslovakia might have faced a brutal solo fight. Another variable is the Soviet Union's ambiguous position then and the logistics of any promised help. So I can imagine two paths. In one, a united stand deters or at least delays a wider war and preserves Czechoslovakia's borders for a time. In the other, it escalates sooner and Prague becomes an early front line. Either way, the cultural implications are huge. The survival of a pluralistic industrial democracy in the center of Europe might have shifted migration patterns, academic networks, and post-war maps.
That's worth exploring. Timelines are fragile. Even small changes can cascade. A surviving interwar Czechoslovakia could alter who studies at Charles University, what factories build, which artists stay, and maybe which borders hold. Love a good rabbit hole.
So there's your big picture. Czechia's story runs from the world's oldest known ceramic figurine to a modern welfare state with low inequality, rich culture, and a name that finally lines up across maps and manuals.
Stay curious, keep it chill, and thanks for hanging out with us on Laid Back Learning with Leah and Garrett.